Billionaire father rejected his poor son. What the boy did next made him beg for forgiveness. Asterisk the elevator hums its silent ascent to the 57th floor, and Maya Chen watches the numbers climb with the same breathless anticipation she felt watching Ethan Reed's company devour market share month after month. Her reflection stares back from the polished steel door's sharp blazer, confident posture, but her pulse betrays her. She's here as a journalist, she reminds herself. Nothing more. The doors part like a curtain revealing a stage. And there he is. Ethan Reed stands silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan sprawling beneath him like a conquered kingdom. 28 years old and already reshaping industries with the quiet fury of someone who has nothing left to prove and everything left to burn. His shoulders fill the tailored black suit perfectly, but it's the stillness in his posture that catches her breath, the kind of control that comes from surviving storms that would shatter lesser men. He doesn't turn, not yet, Miss Chen. His voice carries the weight of boardrooms and late-night strategies, smooth as aged whiskey. Right on time, Maya steps into his office, her heels clicking against marble that probably costs more than most people's cars. The space is minimalist perfection, all clean lines and expensive emptiness. Except for a single photograph on his desk, she can't make out the details from here. But something about the way light catches its silver frame suggests it matters. Mr. Reed. She keeps her voice steady, professional. Thank you for agreeing to the interview. Now he turns. The first time she saw him was 3 years ago at a tech conference, back when his company was just ambitious whispers and venture capital dreams. Even then, something about him had made her pen pause mid-sentence during her notes. Not just the sharp intelligence in those dark eyes, or the way he commanded attention without raising his voice. It was the hunger, raw and carefully contained, like a wildfire banked, but never truly extinguished. That hunger burns brighter now. Please. He gestures toward the sitting area, where leather chairs face each other across a coffee table that's more art than furniture. Can I offer you something? Coffee, water, something stronger? She notices he doesn't specify what stronger might mean, and the slight curve of his mouth suggests he's testing her response. Everything about Ethan Reed is a test. She's learning. Every pause, every glance, every word chosen with the precision of someone who built an empire by never leaving anything to chance. Coffee would be perfect. He moves to prepare it himself rather than calling an assistant, and Maya finds herself watching the efficient grace of his movements. Strong hands that built a company from nothing. Broad shoulders that carried the weight of proving everyone wrong. When he'd first approached his father all those years ago, the media had covered the story. Of course, though never with the full truth. He'd been just 19, desperate for recognition from the man whose blood ran in his veins, but whose acknowledgement remained forever out of reach. Marcus Reed's rejection had been swift and brutal, publicly humiliating. The boy who'd grown up thinking his father was simply absent learned the devastating truth. He'd been abandoned by choice, deemed unworthy before he'd even had a chance to prove himself. Cream, sugar? Ethan asks, and something in his tone makes her look up. He's watching her with an intensity that makes her skin warm. Not the predatory gaze she's grown accustomed to deflecting in her career, but something more unsettling, curiosity mixed with recognition, as if he's seeing something in her that she hasn't revealed. Just cream, she manages. Their fingers brush when he hands her the cup, and the contact sends an unexpected jolt through her system. His skin is warm, slightly rough. Working hands. Despite the billions, despite the corner office, and the empire built on innovation rather than inheritance. So, he settles into the chair across from her, close enough that she catches the subtle scent of his cologne cedar, and something darker, more complex. What would you like to know about my father? The question catches her off guard. She'd planned to ease into the personal territory, to build rapport before diving into the story that had made him famous, the rejected son, who'd built something greater than his father ever dreamed. That's direct. His smile is sharp as winter air. I find it saves time. You're here because of him, aren't you? The story of the poor boy who dared to knock on Marcus Reed's door and got thrown out like yesterday's newspaper. There's no bitterness in his voice, which somehow makes it worse. This is a man who's moved past anger into something more dangerous. Complete indifference to the opinion of someone who should have mattered. Maya leans forward slightly, drawn by the magnetic pull of his controlled intensity. Is that how you see it? A story. Everything's a story, Miss Chen. The question is who gets to tell it. Lightning flickers outside the windows, and the first drops of rain begin their slow descent down the glass. The storm she'd watched building on her way here is finally breaking, and something in the way Ethan's eyes track the weather makes her wonder. If he sees omens in everything, then tell me yours, she says quietly. The words hang between them, loaded with more than professional curiosity. This close, she can see the faint scar along his jawline, evidence of struggles that don't make it into Forbes profiles. Can see the way his breathing changes, just slightly, as if her invitation has shifted something fundamental in the room. He sets down his coffee cup with careful precision. My story, he says, voice dropping to something that's almost intimate, begins with the worst rejection of my life, and ends with watching the man who threw me away realize exactly what he'd lost. Thunder rolls across the city, and Maya realizes she's holding her breath. But first, Ethan continues, rising from his chair with fluid grace. I need to show you something. He moves toward the wall of windows, and Maya follows without thinking. Outside, the storm transforms Manhattan into an impressionist painting, blurred lights and streaming glass, the city rendered soft and dreamlike. But inside this glass tower, everything feels hyper-real. The warmth radiating from his body as he stands close enough for her to count the threads in his suit jacket, the steady rhythm of his breathing that somehow syncs with hers. Do you see that building? He points toward a gleaming skyscraper several blocks north. Reed Industries, my father's legacy. Maya squints through the rain-streaked glass. Even at this distance, the building dominates its block, all steel and corporate pride. The kind of monument built to outlast the man who conceived it. I used to stare at it from a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, Ethan says quietly. My mother and I shared that space for 16 years. She cleaned office buildings at night to keep us fed. I did homework by streetlight when the electricity got cut off. His reflection hovers beside hers in the window, and she can see the precise moment his jaw tightens with memory. I thought he didn't know about us. Naive, right? A bitter laugh escapes him. A man like Marcus Reed knows everything. He chose not to care. Maya turns slightly, studying his profile. What changed your mind about approaching him? My mother got sick. The words are carefully controlled, but she catches the hairline crack in his composure. Cancer. The treatments were expensive. I was 19, working 3 jobs, and it still wasn't enough. The vulnerability in his admission makes her chest tighten. She can picture him young, desperate, swallowing his pride to approach a man who'd already proven he felt nothing for the woman who bore his child. So you went to him. I wore my only suit. Bought it at Goodwill for $12. His smile is sharp enough to draw blood. Waited for hours in his reception area before he'd see me. When I finally got into his office, actually he listened to my entire rehearsed speech about family responsibility and second chances. Ethan's hand flexes against the window, fingers spreading wide as if he's trying to push through the glass. And then he looked at me like I was something he'd scrape off his shoe. You want money, he said. Here's what you're worth to me. He wrote a check for $500 and told security to escort me out. The cruelty of it steals Maya's breath. She'd read about the rejection in business journals, but hearing it from Ethan's lips, seeing the careful blankness he maintains to tell the story makes it visceral. I tore up the check. He continues, right there in the elevator. Let the pieces scatter like snow. Without thinking, Maya reaches out, her fingers finding his wrist. His skin is warm beneath her touch, and she feels his pulse steady but elevated, as if even the memory accelerates his heartbeat. He looks down at her hand, then up at her face, and something electric passes between them. Recognition, understanding, the wordless acknowledgement that some wounds run too deep for casual sympathy. That night, he says, voice dropping to something almost intimate, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't just succeed despite his rejection. I'd make sure he watched everything I built, knowing he could have been part of it. The rain intensifies outside, drumming against the windows like applause. Maya becomes aware of how close they're standing. How the storm has created an island of intimacy in this corporate tower. Her hand is still on his wrist, and neither of them moves to break the contact. "And your mother?" she asks softly. Something flickers across his features, grief, love, regret tangled together. "She died 2 years later. Never got to see me succeed, but she never doubted I would." Maya's heart clenches. "I'm sorry, don't be. She gave me something he never could." Ethan turns fully toward her now, and the intensity of his gaze makes her feel exposed. "She taught me that worth isn't inherited, it's earned." They're standing, so close now that she can see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, can feel the warmth of his breath when he speaks, the professional distance she's maintained with subjects. For 8 years of journalism dissolves like sugar in rain. "Is that why you agreed to this interview?" The question slips out before she can stop it. To make sure he sees the story, Ethan's smile is slow, dangerous, and entirely to knowing. "Maybe. Or maybe I was curious about the journalist who's been following my company's progress with such dedication." Heat rises in her cheeks. She has been following his rise more closely than pure professional interest would explain. Subscribing to industry publications that cover his innovations, attending conferences where he might speak, telling herself it's just good journalism, staying ahead of the story. "I'm thorough," she says, but her voice sounds breathless even to her own ears. "Thorough." He tests the word like wine, rolling it over his tongue. "Is that what we're calling it?" His hand covers hers where it still rests on his wrist, thumb tracing a slow circle over her knuckles. The gesture is subtle, almost innocent, but it sends heat spiraling through her entire system. "Mr. Reed, Ethan." His voice is rough velvet. "We're past formalities now, don't you think?" She should pull away, should remember her ethics, her professionalism, the dozen reasons why this conversation has wandered into dangerous territory. Instead, she finds herself leaning closer, drawn by the magnetic pull of his controlled intensity. "Ethan," she repeats, and something in his eyes flares at hearing his name on her lips. The storm rages outside, but inside this glass tower, time seems suspended. Maya realizes she's stopped breathing, stopped thinking beyond the warm pressure of his hand over hers and the way he's looking at her, like she's a puzzle he's determined to solve. Then his phone buzzes against the coffee table, harsh and insistent. They spring apart as if the sound had been a gunshot. Professional distance snapping back into place like a rubber band. Ethan moves to check the message, his jaw tightening as he reads. "What is it?" Maya asks, smoothing her hair with hands that aren't quite steady. When he looks up, his expression has shifted into something harder, more focused. "Marcus Reed just called an emergency board meeting. It seems he's finally ready to pay attention." The car ride to Maya's hotel is supposed to be professional courtesy. Ethan insisting that sending her out into the storm alone would be ungentlemanly. But sitting in the back of his Tesla, rain streaming down the windows like tears, the space between them crackles with unfinished conversations. "He's scared," Maya says quietly, watching his profile in the amber streetlight that filters through the glass. "Your father." Ethan's hands rest loosely on his knees, but she can see the tension in his fingers. Marcus Reed doesn't get scared. He gets calculating. Same thing, sometimes. The insight surprises him into looking at her directly, and in the intimate confines of the car, the connection between them feels amplified. Every breath, every slight movement, every word weighted with the awareness that they've crossed some invisible line. Back in his office. "You don't know him," Ethan says, but there's no heat in it. "I know you." The words slip out before she can catch them, hanging in the air like a confession. "I mean, I know the story. Your story, do you?" His voice is soft, dangerous. "Tell me what you think you know about me, Maya Chen." The use of her first name sends warmth spiraling through her chest. She turns to face him fully, studying the sharp line of his jaw, the careful control in his posture that can't quite hide the intensity burning beneath. "I know you built something extraordinary from nothing. I know you've never forgotten where you came from, even though you could afford to. I know you work 18-hour days not because you have to anymore, but because stopping would mean thinking too much about what you've sacrificed to get here." His breathing changes, becoming deeper, more deliberate. "What else?" The question is barely above a whisper, and something in his tone makes her pulse quicken. They've pulled up to her hotel, but neither of them moves to get out. The driver waits patiently while rain drums against the roof like a countdown. I know you're lonelier than you let anyone see, she continues, the words coming from someplace deeper than professional observation. Success doesn't fill the spaces that rejection carved out. It just builds walls around them. Ethan goes very still, and Maya realizes she's ventured into territory that no interviewer has ever mapped. The carefully constructed public persona, brilliant, driven, unshakable cracks just enough to let her glimpse the man beneath. You're dangerous, he says finally. Why? Because you see too much. The admission hangs between them, loaded with implications that have nothing to do with journalism and everything to do with the magnetic pull that's been building all evening. Maya knows she should thank him for the ride, collect her professional dignity, and retreat to the safety of her hotel room. Instead, she leans closer. So do you? She whispers. His control fractures. Not completely. Ethan Reed never loses control completely, but enough that she sees the hunger flare in his eyes, the careful restraint that keeps his hands from reaching for her. Maya. Her name sounds different in his voice, rougher, more intimate. You should go. Should I? The question is a challenge, and they both know it. She's giving him an out, giving them both an escape from whatever's building between them. But she's also asking for something else entirely. If you don't, he says, voice dropping to something that's almost a growl, I'm going to kiss you, and that's going to complicate everything. Heat blooms low in her stomach. Everything, your story, my privacy, the professional distance you're trying so hard to maintain. His eyes track to her lips, then back up. The fact that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since you walked into my office. The confession stops her breath. She'd felt the pull, the awareness, but hearing him admit it makes it real in a way that terrifies and thrills her in equal measure. Ethan, I know. His hand lifts, fingers almost but not quite brushing her cheek. I know all the reasons this is a bad idea. I know you have ethics, standards, a reputation to protect. I know I'm supposed to be just another story to you. You're not, she breathes, and the admission costs her everything. You haven't been just a story for months. Something fierce and triumphant flashes in his eyes. Months, she nods, unable to trust her voice. How can she explain that she's been drawn to his story not just as a journalist, but as a woman fascinated by his strength, his refusal to let rejection define him, his quiet determination to prove himself worthy of love he'd never received. Since the tech conference in Boston, she manages. You were giving a presentation on sustainable innovation, and there was this moment when you talked about building something that would outlast us. The passion in your voice, the vision. I forgot to take notes for 20 minutes. His laugh is low, intimate. I remember you. Front row, silver pen. That little frown of concentration when you wrote. I kept looking at you instead of my slides. The admission makes her dizzy. You noticed me, Maya. His voice is rough with want. I've been noticing you for 8 months, every conference, every article you've published, every time our paths crossed in professional circles. I agreed to this interview because I wanted to see if the attraction was real, or if I'd built it up in my head. And instead of answering with words, he finally closes the distance between them. His hand curves around the back of her neck, fingers threading through her hair, and he draws her toward him with careful, deliberate slowness that makes her heart hammer against her ribs. It's real, he murmurs against her lips. The first kiss is soft, testing, a question posed in the gentlest possible terms. But when Maya responds, her hands fisting in the expensive fabric of his shirt, his control slips another notch. He deepens the kiss with a hunger that's been building for months, tongue sweeping against hers with thorough, claiming precision. She tastes like coffee and rain and something indefinably sweet. And Ethan realizes with stunning clarity that every successful negotiation, every conquered market, every victory he's won in the years since his father's rejection pales beside this moment of connection. When they finally break apart, both breathing hard, Maya's eyes are wide and dark with desire. This changes everything, she whispers, I know. His thumb traces the curve of her lower lip, swollen from his kiss. Are you afraid? The question is loaded with meaning. Are you afraid of wanting this? Of wanting me? Of letting professional boundaries collapse in favor of something raw and honest and potentially devastating? Terrified, she admits. His smile is soft, genuine. Stripped of all the careful control she's become accustomed to seeing. Good. So am I. Before she can respond, his phone erupts in urgent buzzing. The spell breaks, reality crashing back with the insistence of business that won't wait for personal revelations. Ethan checks the message, and his expression hardens. The emergency board meeting. They've moved it up to first thing tomorrow morning. Maya straightens her jacket, trying to reclaim some semblance of professionalism even though her lips still burn. From his kiss. "What will you do?" "What I always do," he says. But his eyes stay on her face when Ethan's penthouse apartment is nothing like Maya expected. Where his office was all sharp lines and corporate perfection, this space breathes with warmth and personality. Exposed brick walls showcase carefully curated art, not investment pieces, but works that clearly speak to him personally. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with everything from business strategy to poetry. A kitchen that shows signs of actual use, not just aesthetic appeal. "You cook," Maya observes, running her fingers along the worn wooden cutting board on the granite counter. "My mother taught me." Ethan's voice is softer here, away from corporate battlefields and the ghosts of old rejections. She said a man who couldn't feed himself would always be dependent on someone else's kindness. The vulnerability in the admission makes Maya's chest tighten. She turns to find him watching her with an intensity that's purely personal now, stripped of all the strategic calculation she witnessed in the boardroom. "You did it," she says quietly. "Everything you set out to prove, you proved it." "Did I?" He moves closer, and in the afternoon light streaming through massive windows, she can see the exhaustion that success hasn't quite managed to mask. Because, standing in that room, watching him realize what I'd become, all I could think about was how empty it felt. The confession stops her breath. Empty. Revenge is supposed to be satisfying. Ethan continues, close enough now that she can see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "For years, I told myself that watching him lose everything would be enough. That proving my worth would fill the space his rejection carved out. But it didn't. No." His hand lifts to cup her cheek, thumb tracing the curve of her cheekbone. With devastating gentleness. "It didn't." "Do you know what did?" Maya's pulse quickens under his touch. "What?" "Looking across that boardroom and seeing you there. Knowing that someone was witnessing not just my victory, but understanding the cost of it. Someone who sees the man behind the strategy." The words break something open in her chest. "Ethan, I love you." The confession is quiet, certain, devastating in its simplicity. "I've been falling in love with you for months, and I finally understand that all the success in the world means nothing if I don't have someone to share it with. Who sees me really sees me." Tears blur her vision. "You don't know me. Not really. We've had one interview. One kiss. I know you write poetry in the margins of your notebooks when you think no one's looking. I know you order your coffee with extra cream because you never learned to like bitter things. I know you chose journalism because you believe stories matter, that the truth is worth fighting for even when it's complicated." Each observation lands like a physical touch, proof that his attention to her has been as deep and detailed as hers has been to him. "I know you've been following my story not just as a journalist, but as someone who understands what it means to build yourself from nothing. And I know that when you kissed me back last night, it wasn't just attraction, it was recognition." Maya can't deny it, can't pretend that what's built between them is purely professional or conveniently superficial. "This is insane. I came here to write about your business success, not to fall in love with you. And yet here we are." His other hand finds her waist, drawing her closer until they're breathing the same air. "Tell me you don't feel it too. Tell me this is just a story to you." She can't. The words die on her lips as she looks up at him, this man who built an empire from rejection, who transformed pain into power, who's offering her his heart with the same fierce determination he's brought to every other challenge in his life. "I can't write about you now," she whispers. "Not objectively. Not after this." "Then don't." His voice is rough with what? "Write about something else, someone else. Build your career on stories that don't make you choose between professional ethics and personal truth." "You're asking me to walk away from the biggest story of my career." "I'm asking you to walk toward something bigger." His forehead comes to rest against hers. and she can feel the tremor in his carefully controlled breathing. "I'm asking you to let me love you, Maya. Really love you. Not as a subject for your journalism, but as the woman who sees through all my walls and makes me want to be more than just successful." The choice crystallizes in front of her, clear, terrifying. Perfect, professional advancement or personal truth, the story of a lifetime or the love of a lifetime. "What if we fail?" she breathes. "What if we don't?" And then his mouth is on hers, hot and desperate and full of months of denied want. Maya melts into him, hands fisting in his shirt as he backs her against the kitchen counter. This kiss is nothing like the careful exploration in his car. This is claiming possession. The breaking of every careful restraint they've maintained. When they break apart, both breathing hard, Maya sees her own wonder reflected in his eyes. "I love you too," she whispers against his lips. "I've been trying not to for months, but I love you too." His smile is brilliant, transformative, more beautiful than any corporate victory. "Say it again." "I love you, Ethan Reed." Not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the man who conquered his father's empire. "I love the man who keeps his mother's picture on his desk and cooks dinner for himself and sees poetry in disrupted industries." He kisses her again, softer this time, reverent, as if sealing a promise that goes deeper than business strategies or professional obligations. Later, as evening falls over Manhattan and they sit curled together on his couch sharing takeout from a place his mother used to love, Maya realizes that some stories are too important to write. Some truths are meant to be lived instead of reported. "What happens now?" she asks, head on his shoulder as they watch the city lights flicker to life. "Now we build something new," Ethan says, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Together, something that's not about revenge or proving points or living up to anyone else's definition of success." "And your father?" Ethan is quiet for a moment, considering. "He'll rebuild, find new investors, new strategies. Men like Marcus Reed always do. But for the first time in my life, what he does or doesn't do isn't my concern." The peace in his voice tells her everything she needs to know. The boy who once stood in Marcus Reed's office begging for recognition has finally, completely, moved beyond the need for his father's approval. "I'm proud of you," Maya says quietly, "for destroying his company, for letting go of the need to destroy him." She tilts her head to look up at him. "For choosing love over revenge." His smile is soft, free of the sharp edges that corporate warfare had honed. "Best strategic decision I ever made." Outside the windows, New York pulses with ambition and dreams and the endless possibility of reinvention. Somewhere in the city, Marcus Reed is probably plotting his comeback, planning new ventures, refusing to accept defeat as permanent. But in this penthouse, in the circle of each other's arms, Maya and Ethan have found something worth more than empires, the rare, precious victory of choosing love over pride, connection over conquest, and the beautiful uncertainty of building a future. Together from the ruins of everything they thought they wanted, the city glitters beneath them like scattered diamonds, and for the first time in either of their driven, ambitious lives, the view from the top feels perfect exactly as it is. Maya doesn't sleep. She paces her hotel room until 3 a.m., replaying every moment of the evening the way Ethan's voice had roughened. When he talked about his mother, the heat of his hand covering hers, the devastating honesty of his kiss. By the time dawn breaks over Manhattan, she's made a decision that goes against every professional instinct she's cultivated in 8 years of journalism. She's going to that board meeting. Reed Industries headquarters buzzes with the kind of controlled chaos that accompanies corporate warfare. Maya arrives early, press credentials and determination her only armor, and manages to secure a seat in the back of the boardroom where a handful of financial journalists have been granted access to witness what promises to be a historic confrontation. When Marcus Reed enters the room, she understands immediately where Ethan inherited his commanding presence. The older man moves with the confident stride of someone who's never doubted his right to own whatever space he occupies, silver-haired, expensively tailored, radiating the kind of power that comes from decades of getting exactly what he wants. But there are cracks in the facade, the tension around his eyes, the slightly too rigid set of his shoulders. His empire is under siege, and for the first time in his career, he's not sure he can win. The board members file in 12 titans of industry who collectively control billions in assets. Maya recognizes most of them from business publications, but her attention keeps drifting to the empty chair at the far end of the conference table. Ethan's chair, though he's never officially held a position with his father's company. At precisely 9 a.m., the door opens. Ethan enters alone, no entourage, no legal team. Just the quiet confidence of a man who's already won and is simply here to collect his prize. He's changed since last night. Gone is the approachable warmth she glimpsed in private moments. This is the CEO who's disrupted 3 industries in 5 years. The strategist who's never lost a negotiation that mattered. He takes the empty chair without invitation, settling into it with the casual grace of someone claiming his birthright. Maya's breath catches when his eyes sweep the room and find hers. The connection is instant, electric, a reminder of everything that passed between them in the storm-darkened intimacy of his car. But then his attention shifts to the man at the head of the table, and his expression becomes unreadable. "Gentlemen," Marcus Reed begins, but Ethan interrupts before he can establish control of the narrative. 12 board members. Ethan says conversationally, as if he's commenting on the weather. Funny how many of them have been quietly acquiring shares in Reed Industries through shell corporations over the past 6 months. The room goes dead silent. Maya feels her journalist instinct sharpen. This isn't just a confrontation. It's a carefully orchestrated takedown that's been months in the planning. Marcus's composure cracks slightly. What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything." Ethan's smile is sharp as winter wind. "I'm stating facts. Johnson Acquisitions, Meridian Holdings, Blackstone Ventures, all fronts for the same investment group, all controlled by the same majority shareholder." He pauses, letting the implications sink in. Me. The explosion of voices that follows is immediate and chaotic. Board members demanding explanations. Legal counsel being summoned. Marcus Reed's face cycling through disbelief, rage, and something that might be grudging respect. Maya grips her pen so tightly her knuckles go white. This isn't just revenge, it's poetry. The son who was deemed worthless has spent years quietly acquiring the power to destroy the man who rejected him, and he's done it using the very system that was supposed to exclude him. "You can't do this," Marcus says, but the words lack conviction. He's already running calculations, already seeing how thoroughly he's been outmaneuvered. "I already have." Ethan's voice remains calm, controlled, but Maya catches the thread of something darker beneath. "As of this morning, I control 51% of Reed Industries. Congratulations, gentlemen, you work for me now." The room erupts again. But Ethan's attention has shifted. He's looking directly at Maya now, and she sees something in his expression that makes her pulse quicken. Not triumph, though he's certainly winning, but something more complex. Recognition. Acknowledgement that she's witnessing his moment of ultimate victory, and that having her here matters to him in ways that have nothing to do with business strategy. "The company will be restructured," Ethan continues, never breaking eye contact with her. "Existing management will be evaluated based on merit rather than politics, and Reed Industries will finally live up to the potential it's wasted for the past 30 years. Marcus rises from his chair, hands braced against the polished table. "This is about revenge, nothing more." No, for the first time, emotion colors Ethan's voice. "This is about proving that worth isn't inherited, that value isn't determined by the accident of whose blood runs in your veins, that sometimes the son you throw away becomes the man who rebuilds everything you thought you'd built to last." The words hang in the air like a verdict. Maya realizes she's holding her breath, witnessing a moment of reckoning, years in the making. But she also sees something that the others miss: the way Ethan's hands clench slightly when he talks about blood and inheritance, the careful control that keeps deeper pain from showing. He's won, completely, devastatingly, perfectly, but the victory tastes different than he expected. Marcus seems to deflate slightly, the fight going out of him as he realizes the scope of his defeat. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," Ethan says quietly. "I stopped wanting anything from you the day you wrote that check." The dismissal is complete, final, and somehow more devastating than any amount of anger would have been. Marcus Reed has become irrelevant to his own son's story, a footnote in a narrative that has moved far beyond the need for his approval or recognition. As the meeting dissolves into chaos, lawyers being summoned, damage control strategies being formed, the business press already crafting headlines, Ethan rises from his chair and walks directly to Maya. "I need to talk to you," he says quietly, voice pitched low enough that only she can hear. "Away from all this." Maya nods, her professional objectivity completely shattered by the intensity of what she's just witnessed. "Your office?" "No, somewhere private. Somewhere that's not about business or revenge or proving points to men who stopped mattering years ago." His hand finds the small of her back as he guides her toward the door, and the touch sends heat spiraling through her entire system. Whatever's building between them has reached a breaking point, and Maya realizes with stunning clarity that she's about to cross a line she can never uncross. And for the first time in her career, she doesn't care about the consequences.